When I was probably 11 or 12 years old, I eventually discovered that my father had developed a problem of drinking alcohol, specifically wine. He made a great effort to hide this from everybody, but everybody knew that this was going on. He became addicted to alcohol, and it eventually killed him. We went through all of the issues of trying to deal with this alcoholism in the latter part of his life. In fact, my brother Sterling, who had known him when he was a young man, but then had eventually gone away and wasn't privy to all this, he came home one day and discovered that his father was an alcoholic and cried bitter tears about what had happened to him in his lifetime. There were a lot of factors that could be involved. One of them was that he contracted the flu in the flu epidemic that swept the country right after World War I. He was a young man then, and he survived the flu, but we think may have caused brain damage. He had economic catastrophes through most of his life. He was a hard worker, but was never able to achieve success. He went bankrupt a couple of times, and he's trying to raise 10 children. And this didn't come on until, I was 11 or 12 years old when I started to figure that out. I would say that this went on for maybe 10 years before he finally died from it. Fries your liver. When your liver doesn't function, well, then you start to lose your balance and your mindset, all kinds of things. His wife, my mother, was trying to struggle through all of this. When I was, say, 6 years old, he was still working on the farm, but he had started to drink, and he had started to carry this alcohol, this wine, with him. And so it took from then till I was 16 for it to kill him. It doesn't come on all of a sudden. You slowly go downhill from alcoholism. They did all kinds of things. They sent him to a treatment center, and when he came home from the treatment center, why, he was cured of drinking wine, but the damage was already done. And so he just went downhill from that point. Uncle Lawrence came over and took the firing pin out of his rifle, because he used to get his rifle and try to go someplace to go hunting. He didn't really know where he was going, and everybody was afraid that something was going to happen to him. I can remember one time he got his rifle and he was going down the street, and he walked over too close to the ditch, and instead of jumping the ditch or getting away from it, he fell into the ditch and couldn't get out. So that's a very sad story. He laid on the couch for a long time. Eventually his bowels quit working, and so he got constipated. I can remember the doctor coming and cleaning his bowels out manually. The day that he died, Uncle Alden came down, and he was just laying there staring up into the ceiling, and Uncle Alden pushed his hands over his eyes, and he didn't blink, which means he's dead. And I was on my way home from school, walking home from school. I can't remember who met me, but I knew that his death was imminent. And I could tell that it was. The other half of that story is that after Danny died, Sister Linda Wright was sitting in church Sunday after Danny died, and she looks over at the door of the chapel, and there's Danny standing there. And he says to her, "Hi, Sister Wright, it's me, Danny." And then he goes up to the front of the chapel, up where the pulpit is, and he stands there for a little while, and then he goes back down. It's in Grandma's history in detail, but the thing that is significant to me in that story is that there's a person that is with him. In fact, there's several people that are with him when he comes back. One particular escort, and Sister Wright, who didn't know my father, later identified that person who was with him as my father. And this person that was with him was a person of light. That tells me a couple of things. My father, by that time, had gotten beyond whatever his issues were in this life, with the alcoholism and the way that he died, and the trouble that he put everybody through. So what that tells me is that we probably should be somewhat careful about quickly judging people. They all have issues, and they all have different kinds of issues. I think the young people today have issues that we never heard of in our young days, and so don't be too quick to judge. My mother, I was surprised at my father's funeral. I thought that she would be kind of relieved that this part of her life was over. She went through all the motions of having a funeral, and then when they closed the casket for the last time, my mother lost it. Up until then, she had never broken down. She was always trying to hold things together. To summarize my father's life, he grew up as a popular young man in Spanish Fork, fulfilled an honorable mission of 3 years in Denmark, came home and courted and married one of the town's most beautiful young ladies. And then he went into what almost everybody did in those days, and that was farming and raising livestock. I don't know why, but he had the experience of going through the Great Depression, and he lost all of his cattle and all of his farm. He lost everything except the milk cow, and the milk cow broke away and came home, and the banker didn't have the guts to come and get it again, so the kids had milk. And he not only went through that bankruptcy, he went through 2 more bankruptcies. I'm not privy to all of the details of how he got into trying to solve his problems with the use of alcohol, but it happens. I think he was especially vulnerable because he'd previously had an experience with the great flu epidemic after the war, which actually killed a lot of people in this country. Back in those days, not everybody in the family went on a mission. They usually picked one person out of a family of 7 to 10 kids, and they got sent on a mission. In my father's case, it was him. He's the one that got picked to go on a mission. And in my family's case, it was Uncle Snell that got picked to go on a mission. When he left to go on his mission, he was worried about how we were going to afford to keep him out there. And my dad took him out into the backyard, and he had a whole herd of pigs out there. And they were all at various sizes and ages. And he said, the way you're going to be sustained on your mission is that as soon as one of these pigs gets to the right age to sell, I'll sell him, and we'll take the money and send it to you. And we'll do that every month while you're gone. And this herd of pigs is going to keep you on your mission. Now, at this point in his life, he was not involved in all this alcoholism. It came on really later in life and affected him, I think, dramatically and swiftly, because some people, they're drinking when they're young and they live long lives. His came on late and it was more swift.